So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the latest in aviation, biofuel and plastics, bioplastics. I'm going to focus on industrial applications and the kind of demand that we're seeing, because that's the area that I work in. I'm a consultant. There were some technical details, but it's mainly to do with markets. Right, so first of all, quickly setting the scene and looking at bioplastics first of all, latest products and where next, and then a couple of slides on aviation biofuels and the Corsia development. So I put this slide in for when it gets transferred through to everybody, but I'm a chemist. I've worked in process development for 13 years, in environmental measurements for another 10 years, and since about 2012, I've worked for myself as an independent consultant, and I work with two other people when we have large, broad projects, and some of these are the customers that I've worked for. Right, so let's talk about setting the scene and what is affecting demand for products from the bioeconomy, basically. So, you know, we all know that there's been push for bio-based chemicals and fuels to alleviate greenhouse gas emissions from fossil-based products, which is becoming even more important as we pledge to go to net zero in 2050. But now we've got another emergency. In addition to the climate one, we have the pandemic, and there's been a lot of call for this new normal to be much more sustainable than the old normal. It's going to be industries and support structures are being financed by the taxpayer to recover, and so that recovery should be more sustainable. And this discussion is centered on less polluting transport as we experience cleaner cities without cars because everyone's been locked down. There's more and more packaging being used because for hygiene reasons, and also because there's been a lot more internet shopping, which requires a lot of packaging. And then the epidemic has exposed how long some of the supply chains are, with raw materials coming right across the world, and they're easily ruptured, causing shortages. So countries are now focusing much more on local production. So in general, companies will be expected to take account of all this and to introduce greener products if they want to engage fully with customers who are preoccupied, quite rightly so, and governments with what the new normal should look like. And bioplastics and biofuels produced from local biomass do indeed fit with this narrative. So let's have a quick look at demand for bioplastics. As we all know, there's the drop-in type that are exactly the same as conventional ones, except made with bio-based raw materials. And then there are specially developed bioplastics, which are compostable under different conditions. None of these are particularly seen by the EU as the answer to the environmental problems caused by single-use plastic. So none of them are exempt from any of the regulations coming in. So that's very negative. Added to that, they're much more expensive than conventional plastics, and international brands have second thoughts because they think that biodegradable and compostable materials might encourage consumers to litter rather than disposing of their packaging correctly. But demand for the products is growing. Consumers prefer plant-based products and packaging to those made from oil. And of course, bioplastics, the reason that they were introduced is that they have a lower carbon footprint. So brands and companies are still launching new products, and finding new uses, and take up is successful. I've just picked out a few which caught my eye and which I have worked on for customers. So one of them is this high barrier laminate, which is completely compostable. It's introduced by Parkside Flexibles in the UK. Up until now, bioplastics have poor barrier properties, particularly for water. But a lot of foods require high barriers to oxygen and water. And this composite, which is a cellulose layer with a PBS layer, and then one of the layers has a very thin deposited coating of aluminium. Then with extra strength from the cardboard, it has its certifiably compostable under industrial conditions, and answers to the demand for a compostable food packaging. Next one, you've probably heard of coffee capsules and tea bags, which are compostable, and they are having success. And then the third one is what's called bioattributed products. They are made with co-processing of fossil and biomass, and then the bio-based units by an accounting method are attributed to a polymer, so in this case PVC. And this is enabling all of the large brands, of the large producers, to claim that they're producing some bio-based products. So I haven't got too much time, but the demand is expected to increase in the Far East. China is exempting some biodegradable plastics from their bans on single-use plastics. And composting offers a cheaper solution to waste management for developing countries than expensive sorting and recycling. And then technologically, PHAs, polyhydroxyalkanoates, offer the prospect of marine biodegradable plastic packaging. They are available as a resin, but so far have not been successfully converted into useful competitive packaging material. So now I'm going on to aviation biofuels. So the news over the past few months is that the UN's International Civil Aviation Organization has finally completed its CORSIA scheme, which allows aviation to either offset its emissions or reduce them by using less carbon intensive fuels. And the news is that sustainable biofuels will play a part, and that the sustainability regulations have been drawn up to be very similar to the strong land protection rules that exist in Europe. So for instance, preserving forests and areas of high diversity since 1st of January 2008 are still in for aviation biofuels. But then, whereas Europe is restricting biofuels from crops for road transport, this international system will not restrict crops. So where next for aviation biofuels? So I think the good news is that this market will be opened up to countries all over the world with spare agricultural land suitable for oilseed crops, as long as they're not converting any forest or biodiverse land. And that will give hopefully a boost to their economy, which they haven't been able to benefit from aviation fuel in the past if they haven't had fossil fuel resources. Another effect will be that some waste biogenic oils, like used cooking oil, which are used in road transport, may be converted from biodiesel to aviation fuel. And that a lot of countries have fossil refining in place already, but they may be able to convert some of those units to hydrotreat the vegetable oils needed for aviation biofuels. So, you know, that's a very quick race through those topics. I'd be very happy to answer any questions, but if you're interested, you can email me directly with questions as well. So that's a bit over time, but not too much.
Okay, we have a bit more time today. Thank you very much.
Good.
That is actually